Let's see what rumors the tabloids have for us this evening slash afternoon, people. Miguel Delaney, who I believe works for the Independent, forgive me for getting it wrong, has said Mikel Arteta has been in discussions with Arsenal's hierarchy about bringing forward plans for a project attacker. Arteta wants a physically imposing forward who can grow with Gyökeres, Koulibaly, and Evan Ferguson all raised. Cesco is the ideal profile. Now, I know Cesco doesn't want to leave mid-season, but if you're willing to pay the release clause and really chat to him, it doesn't hurt to ask the question. Now I've seen, the dream for me would be Isaac. We all know Arsenal can't afford that even in the summer, or they're not going to go for it. Cesco, someone that's been aggressively linked. I like the look of Gyökeres. Koulibaly's gone to Juventus on a dry loan, so you could pick that up in the summer, but it's fair to say that's gone. Obviously, at this moment in time, we have Neto and Raheem Sterling on loan, so we couldn't get another Premier League loan. Does that eliminate Evan Ferguson from Brighton? Are the club prepared to commit the transfer fee, maybe at a discount that Brighton want? Does it make sense for the club? I don't know. And even for Ferguson, like, obviously, I'm sure people can say what they want about Arsenal, but there's been a project there. You've seen young players grow. There is the London aspect. There are things that could entice him to want to sign for Arsenal. But for him, beyond that, does it make sense? You need to get game time, rightly or wrongly. And obviously, owing to the lack of attacking options we have, you could argue there's game time. But Kai Havertz is in front of you at this moment in time. Thoughts are with Gabriel Jesus with his ACL, but he would have been in front of you. You need to go somewhere where you're going to, nothing's guaranteed. You have to earn whatever manager's trust and show you're the guy. But surely you have to go somewhere where you're guaranteed to at least play the majority of games and maybe even start the majority of games from now to when the season ends. And I mean, you have to take everything these journalists say with a pinch of salt. I do like, talking about, doing watch alongs with you lot, match reactions, Arsenal therapy when things going wrong, transfer news, all of this sort of stuff. But again, you have to look at it with a pinch of salt because 99% of it is was. And for me, even in the case of Mendy, who seems like he's going to be an Arsenal player, until he's holding an Arsenal shirt, pictured around the Emirates or our training centre with scarves and merchandise and saying he grew up watching Thierry Henry and Alex Ferguson. Definitely not. Wenger will save ourselves. Wenger and Ferguson's beef, but you get the point. Thierry Henry, Tony Adams, Dennis Bergkamp, etc. You can't count chickens before they hatch. Carrying that on, Mikel Arteta apparently again wants a physically imposing forward who can grow with Benjamin Cesco class as an ideal forward. Now, nothing is guaranteed, and we'll never know really and truly what Cesco's thoughts were in the summer. We've seen the Athletic come out and say Arsenal wanted to wait to get the deal done at a certain point so that it falls under a certain accounting year. We heard that Kai Havertz, Mikel Arteta and Arsenal gave Cesco no indication that he'd play ahead of Kai Havertz. It does make me look at Cesco funny in the sense of, do you reckon, respectfully to Kai, if you're meant to be a decent striker that's growing and one of the best in the, well, when I say best, like one of the most recognizable names, you should be looking at Kai Havertz like, I'm going to take your shirt. And then I'm also looking at Arsenal funny because you might have had blind faith in Kai Havertz to continue how he left last season and do it for the duration of the season. So probably should have just picked him up now. For what it's worth, if Arsenal, to be fair to Cesco, even though I look at you funny and definitely I'd think twice about signing a striker that couldn't believe they could take Kai Havertz's spot. At the same time, if Arsenal are not giving you positive signals, you're going to play really week in, week out at Leipzig. Even at times he was second fiddle there. And if you believe that's the best pace for your development and a move either to Arsenal or Barcelona, let's just say top 5 European divisions or stronger leagues really, or stronger teams, it's a matter of time, innit? For me, as I said, the dream would be Isaac. It seems like the club likes Cesco. I like the man's profile. I like what he does. I'd go for him. And then after that, I would look at Gyökeres or to the same level. I do like what I see from Gyökeres. Beyond that, there's not really too much on the market. Obviously, I'd love Aston Villa's John Duran. Feels like them kind of players there, you need to get them before, obviously, they end up at their clubs that they're currently at. Because, we've been linked with plenty of players that I'd love at the carpet, man. Gyökeres, Isaac, Cunha, Kudus, you know where I'm going, all these Premier League players, but they cost a lot of money, and whether Arsenal are going to commit, that's another thing. Mikel Arteta's powers over transfers at Arsenal is growing and growing, and we've seen that several times. He is the manager, not the head coach. I do think he had more power than Edu. Obviously, at this moment in time, credit to Jason Ito, and we'll have to see what he's doing, but to us, it's not clear who is the long-term sporting director, and the club have committed to Mikel Arteta, giving him a new contract, been through back-to-back eights to compete in. There's been a lot of money spent. Why would they turn back now? They might as well hand him the powers, really, rightly or wrongly, whether I agree with that. The Athletic came out and said Arsenal debated the merits of signing Mareno, who we signed for 30 odd million quid with a year left. Before proceeding, there were concerns over his age and plausibility of getting a return on their substantial investment. Arteta's belief in Calafiori and Marino's talent ultimately drove through Arsenal's interest. So it highlights his growing influence. Obviously, I like Calafiori. I make no excuses for his age because he did arrive here in Italian international, but I think people need to remember he's 22. The only concern is his fitness, really. And Mikel Moreno, I think, had we have signed a Mendy or someone and you arrived at the same time, people might have viewed you different. But we needed level raisers going into the season, as we know. In my opinion, Moreno is not that. And obviously, there's very few signings that everybody's going to unanimously agree on. There's, all of us, if we got in a room, we'd all have different opinions, right? Obviously, substantial investment. It's not the same, but Declan Rice, you spent 100 million quid on him. You're not going to make 100 million plus back on him, kind of. So I think that's harsh on Moreno. Of course, he's not probably seen as a level raiser in Declan Rice's regard, and obviously is a couple of years older than him. So there are obviously no two cases are the same, but you get the point, people, with the growing belief. And we definitely need a striker because in the last 2 games, we've had 49 shots and scored just 1 goal. Goals win games. They're the hardest thing to do in football. Allegedly, the Athletic also said Arsenal are in the middle of a recruitment process for a new sporting director, working with an external recruiter. Arsenal have compiled a list of candidates with interviews set to begin in earnest once the window was closed in February. So, I would imagine, depending on how this works out and what he's doing already, Jason Ito's probably a candidate. We're getting all the band together that used to play for Sociedad. You might as well get Alabi. I'm not against Luis Campos. I think we need an experienced man to kind of steady the ship and pull rabbits out the hat, really. I wasn't really a fan of everybody grow. It sounds great, but everybody kind of growing together. You got an relatively inexperienced manager and sporting director. I think you either have one of the two, and I think we need an experienced man. And I think they need to be given a voice, really, because you look at Mareno, Kai Havertz, Calafiori, whether they've worked out or not. Maybe the sporting director had that was previously here. Maybe he had other targets or better ways to spend the money, rightly or wrongly, and Arteta overruled him. So I don't know, people. Again, you would have seen today we're starting to aggressively get linked with Mbeumo, who's having a great season for Brentford. I don't imagine Brentford are going to let him go in January. If there's a capacity to bring him in January, who wouldn't want Brian Mbeumo? Arsenal, Manchester United, and Tottenham Hotspur compete for Brian Mbeumo's signature. That's according to reports from France, people, which claim Arsenal hold an interest in Brentford's Mbeumo. However, they may face stiff competition from Premier League rivals. Now, we've heard about that before. We all know Gabriel Jesus is injured at the moment, people. We all know there's a lack of collective goals and players that are individually going to get those goals, highlighted with the form of the players that are fit. Obviously, Bukayo Saka's been injured. Spurs tried to get Coleman. They're in the Mbeumo race, allegedly. Manchester United's a massive club, I'd imagine. And Mbeumo would want to listen to what Arsenal and Man United have to say. I mean, he could want to listen to Spurs. It's in London, etc. But Arsenal, Man United, regardless of where they are, Tottenham Hotspur under austerity measures. It's hardly like when, obviously, I'm an Arsenal fan, I'm going to slander them, but it's not like Pochettino Spurs, where I think they were unbeaten for the whole season at White Hart Lane, etc. You're seeing the kind of players they've got. It's a different kind of remit. You're better off staying at Brentford. Agendas. Apparently, Brentford will want over 50 million euros, which equates to about 40 odd million quid. If that's really the fee, surely they wait to sell him in the summer, because again, it doesn't matter if you're trying to win a Premier League title, stay in the division, qualify for whatever you're trying to qualify in Europe, in the European places, win an FA Cup or a cup. Football is football's about goals. Goals win games. And why would you want to lose someone that is clearly a key player, clearly performing? Him and Visa, I'm not going to be disrespectful to Ivan Toney, but did Brentford really miss Ivan Toney with his form? Now, for what it's worth, personally, I think Mbeumo will leave Brentford in the summer. To where he goes, I don't know. I only say that because Thomas Frank the other day was giving an interview and he was praising Mbeumo, and he kind of alluded that Mbeumo wanted to leave last summer. And I think he's contracted until 2026. similar to Ivan Toney, where they held off in January and then let him go in the summer? I'm not sure, people, but I'm sure Brentford would want to convince him to sign a new deal. For what it's worth, Alex Crook of TalkSport has said Thomas Frank says there's no chance of Mbeumo leaving this month, people. Ben Jacobs has added his 2 pence in where Cesco's concerned. Don't know if he's credible or not, but he's echoed what a lot of people are saying. Arsenal retain a strong interest in Cesco. The striker was sold on the club's project last summer, but stayed at Leipzig as he felt it was best for his short-term development. For somewhat, you know what, Mikel Arteta, I'm not in the room, but rightly or wrongly, and I mean, the players are going to say this. I listen to all the players, and especially the recent recruits. When I've heard Kai Havertz, Zinchenko, Gabriel Jesus, Jurien Timber, Declan Rice, if I haven't said that, Calafiori, when they're talking about when Arteta chatted to them about wanting to sign for the club and everything, like whether we rate Arteta or not, it seems like he in a positive way, clouds their minds and he's really on it. So how sold was he? Because it must have been a fight with the devil, because we saw Cesco's agent. 1 minute he's at Stamford Bridge, then he's at Arsenal, then he's at United. It felt like he'd be on the move in the summer. Maybe he expected to, but that wasn't the case. Maybe the agent played everybody against themselves and played a blinder, because he did sign a new deal, which apparently is unclear, but still has a release clause. David Ornstein has said Arsenal are active in the market. I'm aware of them exploring situations. You would look to the loan market outside of England, the other big leagues on the continent. That's why there have been links with Vlahovic and Benjamin Cesco and so on. Cesco is a long-term target that Arsenal have looked at for a number of windows. I think it'd be difficult to do it at this time of year, more a summer one. And that's all we keep hearing. The summer's going to be great, people. Ornstein also said on Martin Zubimendi, his release clause is 60 million euros. My understanding is that they, obviously in brackets, Arsenal, will look to pay a bit more so that they can stagger the payments, and that would allow them to do other business next summer. How you lot control the budget? Control the budget. All I know as a humble Arsenal fan who can't change or do anything, I know we need a midfielder. Again, I haven't seen Zubimendi on Arsenal.com officially signed for the club. I would have preferred an 8 and to let Rice go in the 6. Small hope that there's an 8 that arrives, but all right, Zubimendi's your guy. Cool. You got Zubimendi. You got a midfielder. I need to see another inside forward, whether that's someone that can compete and deputize for Bukayo Saka, or someone that is more likely to line up on the left-hand side. That's an upgrade of our options. It goes without saying we need a striker. We do need to sort out the goalkeeping situation. An unpopular opinion for me, I would like another defender. My preference would be someone of the, to a degree, Calafiori and Kivior, but more so I'd say Timber and Tomiyasu. Tomiyasu we don't see. Someone that can play across the back four. We ultimately need a bigger squad. And that's before we talk about, continuing to integrate the young Lewis Skelly and Ethan, and probably need to give them some new contracts. On the topic of contracts, whether Jason Ito is going to be our sporting director or new guys coming in, you're going to have in the summer Saliba, Gabriel, and Saka last 2 years of their deal. Bearing in mind, heading into the 25-26 season, it's a World Cup year as well. We need to get that sorted out. I could be wrong, and obviously it's not to these guys' levels, but I would also, I think Martinelli. Now, we have in the last few years been quite good at quickly renewing deals and sorting things out. And obviously we heard Trossard rejected a contract offer, which again, I'm not trying to get at Trossard. Typically in a negotiation, you never accept the first offer. That seems to be something. Arsenal are hoping to complete a deal for Zubimendi in the summer of 2025, people. Arsenal would once again be prepared to pay slightly more if they can negotiate more favorable terms. So technically, for all the, and it definitely is a spring in my step to see not only Fabrizio Romano, but Fabrizio Romano, David Ornstein, Sammy Motbell, 3 of the more in-the-know credible journalists simultaneously all talking about Zubimendi. Weirder things have happened, and as I said, you can't get excited if you want to get excited, because I'm excited about his signing in the summer and what next season has to say. We need to act now. Until it's signed on the dotted line, you can't get too excited. And also in Zubimendi's case, because how many times it's like he's going to leave, change your heart. So nothing's decided. Arsenal and Spurs allegedly are interested in signing Tariq Mitchell this month from Crystal Palace. His contract runs out at the end of the season, people. We'll have to see what's going on there. I have tweeted about this, but Aiden Haven could potentially be leaving Arsenal. Allegedly, he's rejected a pro deal. And he's got interest from Premier League clubs, German clubs, including Frankfurt. Would love for him to stay. Obviously, for centre-backs, it's a bit different. Obviously, I think Saliba could have played when the club was a mess. But mistakes are more costly in your defense than attack. At worst, an attacker might miss an open goal and you'll kill him for that, but you can live. Defense, you make an error, it's a goal conceded. And for Heathen, I understand it really if you do want to leave, because whether they stay or go, you've got multi-million-pound players or signings ahead of you at this moment in time. You are left-footed. You can, you got Kivior, you got Zinchenko, you got Calafiori, your age mate Lewis Skelly has thrown his hat into the ring. He's not here, but Tomiyasu, Benjamin White, a number of these guys can play, if not necessarily left back, centre half, and full back. Obviously, you got Saliba and Gabriel, so it's a tough ask, really, really and truly. I must admit, he doesn't look ready. You saw that in preseason. I don't necessarily, and that's not a bad thing. Not everybody's ready right now, kind of thing. It makes sense if that's the case, people, and it's not necessarily about being ready at around 18. You've got to be, you want to make sure you have a top career when you approach the end of your 20s, people. I mean, this is an easy one to link Arsenal with, and I don't believe it one bit. But nonetheless, Kingsley Coleman is still linked with Arsenal. Allegedly, he's been offered to us, but we're unsure he represents good value on current costings. Now, Arsenal tax with injuries in general and the injuries we currently face, for me, it doesn't make sense. Of course, he plays in a position that we need to identify, and I wouldn't cry if we signed Kingsley Coleman. And I know we get on to Arsenal about spending money, and when they spend money, they're not doing it right. I hear it. Now, I don't hear it if January closes and we have not brought in an attacker of some capacity. Naturally, you would imagine the futures of Jorginho and Partey are subject to speculation on the best of days, more so with what we're seeing with Mendy and also with their contracts running out. Partey and Jorginho are being pushed towards the Arsenal exit door in Mikel Arteta's midfield rebuild. Now, you could argue that there is a future where you could have one of Jorginho/Partey, Mikel Mareno, Declan Rice, and assuming the Mendy thing happens. I don't really want to see it, but you have to remember Martin Odegaard can play in a deeper role, and maybe with Mendy, and I check out the video I did on this. I think Declan Rice and Mendy at the base, Declan Rice and Declan Rice and Odegaard rotating kind of eights, or you could kind of. If you remember the first half against Brighton, where Mareno and Rice were very high, making overlapping runs, there's a lot of things we can do. There is a reality where you keep Partey or Jorginho, and it depends. Would you keep Partey or Jorginho? Because it does seem like Jorginho is an extension of the coaching staff and all of that kind of stuff. You could argue it is the last year of his deal, and you do normally see players performing, but Partey's been one of our best players this season. Could it be worth giving him a contract renewal? We know Mikel Arteta loves him, whether it's right back or in centre mid would play him. I do wonder though, and this is above my head, obviously, on one hand, we finished second last year, 2 points off City. We needed to close the gap, big money signings, etc. Simultaneously, rightly or wrongly, I do think there was a push with Arsenal to kind of offset the spending we've done and get some fees for players, etc., etc. I only waffle about that to mention this. Is it an opportunity to free up the wage bill in general and give ourselves better resources to flirt with in the summer? I'm not pocket watching. I don't know how much these guys are on, but you'd imagine Thomas Partey's on a pretty wage. Jorginho's on something decent. Zinchenko's linked with Dortmund. He's on something decent. Tierney's probably going to depart the club, and he's on like 100 grand. Reece Nelson, the same. Obviously, you've still technically got the Fabio Vieiras, the Lokongas, the Tavareses, people of this ilk. I don't expect us to address every area in terms of incomings and outgoings, but you can see why we need to free up resources to, to pour that into renewing the Salibas, the Gabriels, the Sakas, etc., and bringing in players really and truly. It is what it is. We've gone over that with my man. And Fabrizio Romano on the 3rd of January did say negotiations were underway for Tierney to return to Celtic from Arsenal. Apparently, he's keen on the move and talks to continue to reach full agreement. He's then followed that up today and said Celtic and Tierney deal on. Now, it's unclear to me if that's a pre-agreement so that he could leave. He could sign for them for free and they don't pay a fee. That could obviously mean he's moving in January. I don't know where Arsenal stand. Are you at the point where you say, you know what? Might as well just let him run down his deal. You can see the climate with injuries. Might as well just keep him on the bench and have him. Or is it a thing where we've committed to not extending his deal because it came out that we haven't extended his contract by an additional year? We had the option. Some money's better than none. I don't know, people, really and truly where we're going to be at. But, a silly season. It's the 15th of January. It's easy to link us with players. I definitely enjoy making content and talking about it with you lot. You lot let me know your thoughts. But until we see official confirmation, it doesn't mean much.
because he always just goes, I have to defend that.
I think if he, like